The moment my daughter handed the keys to our family cabin to her husband's parents without even asking me, something inside me broke. Then she smiled and said, "Dad, it's only fair. You live alone now." She had no idea those words were about to change her life forever. Stay with me, because before this day ended, the sheriff would be standing at that cabin, and nobody saw it coming. If you enjoy emotional family stories with unforgettable endings, subscribe to Behind Dad and become part of our growing family. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Before I continue, I should mention that the pictures and scenes you see throughout this video are creative visual illustrations meant to help bring this story to life. My name is Robert. I'm 69 years old, and after losing my wife 5 years ago, that little cabin became the only place where I still felt close to her. We built it together when we were young. Every wall, every window, every piece of furniture carried a memory. My daughter, Emily, grew up spending every summer there. I honestly believe those memories meant as much to her as they did to me. One Friday afternoon, Emily called instead of visiting. She sounded excited, but not about seeing me. She proudly told me she had already given the cabin keys to her husband's parents so they could spend the entire summer there. She never asked for my permission. She acted as if the cabin already belonged to her. I stayed quiet for several seconds, trying to understand what I had just heard. Then I slowly walked to my desk, opened one old drawer, and took out a file that nobody in the family had ever bothered to read. I asked Emily to stop by my house that evening. She walked in smiling, convinced I would eventually agree with her decision. Her husband, Jason, stood beside her with his arms crossed, acting as if everything had already been settled. I looked at both of them and quietly slid the old file across the table. "Before you make another decision about that cabin," I said, "read every page." Emily barely glanced at the cover before pushing it back toward me. "Dad, it's just paperwork," she said. "We don't need legal documents to be a family." Those words stung more than she realized. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to protect something her mother had trusted me to protect. I remembered the promise I made to my wife while she was in the hospital. She held my hand and whispered, "Don't let anyone take away the place where our family began." I had carried that promise with me every single day since she passed away. Emily stood up and said they were leaving for the cabin that night anyway. Jason grabbed the keys from the counter with a confident smile. As they walked out the door, I felt my heart sink. Part of me wanted to stop them, but another part knew they had already made their choice. I watched their car disappear down the road, then picked up my phone and made one calm call. I wasn't angry. I wasn't looking for revenge. I simply asked that the law protect what legally belonged to me. The person on the other end listened carefully, thanked me, and said, "We'll handle it first thing in the morning." At that moment, I realized the next sunrise would change my daughter's life in a way she never expected. I barely slept that night. My mind kept going back and forth between anger and heartbreak. I wasn't thinking about the cabin anymore. I was thinking about my daughter. I kept asking myself where things had changed between us. Had I been too soft? Had I made life so easy for her that she forgot the difference between love and entitlement? Every question hurt more than the last. Just after sunrise, my phone rang. It was my neighbor who lived near the cabin. His voice sounded nervous. "Robert, there's a sheriff's vehicle parked outside your property." I thanked him, grabbed my jacket, and drove there as fast as I could. When I arrived, Emily, Jason, and his parents were standing on the porch, completely shocked. The sheriff calmly explained that the property was privately owned and that no one had permission to stay there without the owner's written approval. Emily looked at me with disbelief. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" she asked. I reached into my truck, picked up the same file she refused to read, and handed it to her again. This time she opened it. The first page wasn't just another document. It was the legal trust my wife and I had created years earlier. The cabin could never be transferred, borrowed, rented, or occupied without my signed authorization. It had been written that way to protect our family's legacy for future generations. As Emily continued reading, the color slowly disappeared from her face. She finally understood that I hadn't been hiding anything from her. She had simply chosen not to listen. Then the sheriff quietly asked Jason's parents to gather their belongings. Within minutes, they began carrying their bags back to the car, and the silence between all of us felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. Emily stood there holding the file, with tears running down her face. She finally looked at me instead of the papers and whispered, "Dad, I never thought I was hurting you this much." Those words hit me harder than all the arguments we'd had. I wasn't interested in proving I was right. I only wanted my daughter to understand that love doesn't erase respect, and being family never gives anyone the right to take what isn't theirs. Jason quietly apologized, admitting he should have stopped the whole idea before it went this far. His parents also apologized for accepting the keys without asking who actually owned the cabin. Before sunset, they packed the last of their belongings and drove away. The cabin became peaceful again, just as your mother and I had always remembered it. For the first time in a long while, Emily asked if we could sit on the old porch together. We watched the sun go down without saying much. Sometimes silence says more than words ever can. Before we finish, I want to mention that every image and scene you've seen in this video is a creative illustration designed to help bring this story to life. They're meant to support your imagination as the story unfolds. That day taught both of us a lesson we'll never forget. Property can be replaced. Money can be earned again. But trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. If you still have parents who love you, never mistake their kindness for permission to ignore their boundaries. One conversation can save a relationship that pride might destroy. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments. What would you have done in my place? Share this video with someone who believes families should always be built on love and respect. And if you want more unforgettable stories like this, subscribe to Behind Dad. Until next time, remember this: the strongest families aren't held together by property, they're held together by respect.